Crown of Lies, Heart of Ruin. Chapter 1 The Lie That Started with Rain. The rain in Valeria's kingdom never fell softly. It crashed. Cold, brutal, and unforgiving, splitting the city clean into two worlds. On the hill above, the royal palace blazed with golden chandeliers, polished marble, and endless wealth. Down below, in the slum districts, gutters flooded, walls leaked, and ordinary people drowned in quiet struggle. Lila Carter was 22, an orphan, a street florist, a survivor. She had no parents, no fortune, no title. She had only one reason to keep breathing, her 17-year-old foster sister Mia, lying in a public hospital, waiting for urgent surgery Lila could barely afford. 2 jobs, 16-hour days, calloused hands, endless fatigue. This was her life. No time for dreams. No time for love. Only survival. Until the night she saved a prince who refused to be honest. The sports car came tearing down the wet hill road too fast, hydroplaning, slamming into a concrete barrier. Metal crumpled. Glass exploded. Smoke billowed through the downpour. Lila was closing her flower stall when the crash split the stormy silence. She should have run. She knew better than to get involved with rich people's accidents. The nobility of Valerius never cared about the poor. They saw people like her as disposable dirt. But she saw the blood seeping through the shattered window, and she could not turn away. Lila forced the jammed door open, ignoring the sharp edges that sliced her palms. Inside sat a man unconscious, breathtakingly beautiful in a way that felt dangerous. Soaked black hair, sharp jawline, pale skin marred only by fresh blood from a deep forehead gash. His tailored suit screamed old money, power, privilege, the kind of person who never belonged in her broken corner of the city. She dragged him back to her tiny attic apartment, a cramped, leaking room with second-hand furniture and thin walls. She cleaned his wound, bandaged him, and waited for him to wake up. When his eyes flew open, Lila froze. Sapphire blue. Cold, royal, hypnotic. Eyes built for thrones and command. Who are you? His voice was low, hoarse, authoritative, the voice of someone who had never needed to beg for anything in his life. The person who saved your life, Lila answered flatly, unafraid. You should be grateful. He stared at her like no one had ever dared to look at him without fear, without flattery, without subservience. Just a stubborn, fiery girl covered in rain, standing in her shabby little apartment, unimpressed by his aura of power. For the first time in his life, Prince Elias Voss did not want to be the crown prince of Valerius. He wanted to be nobody. Just Elias. He gave her only his first name. No title. No explanation. No truth. Lila told him her name, and in that rainy, quiet night, they started a love built entirely on deception. Elias never told her he was the future king. He never told her he had a formal, nation-announced engagement to Princess Seraphina, the most powerful noblewoman in the kingdom. He never told her their love was impossible, cursed, and doomed from the very beginning. For 2 months, he lived 2 lives. By day, he was the perfect cold crown prince, attending state meetings, posing for press photos, standing beside his fiancée for royal ceremonies, carrying the weight of an entire kingdom on his shoulders. By night, he sneaked out of the palace through secret passages, outran his guards, crossed the entire city, and came to Lila's slum attic. With her, he was gentle, soft, human. He watched her arrange cheap flowers. He ate her simple pasta. He listened to her worry about her sister's medical bills. He held her cold hands and whispered promises he had no right to make. I will never let you suffer again. I only want you. Trust me. Lila fell completely, irrevocably in love. She thought she had found the one good thing in her miserable life. She thought love could cross class lines, status gaps, everything. She believed in him. Believed in them. She had no idea she was only his secret escape, his midnight distraction, his temporary salvation from his suffocating royal cage. The truth shattered on a bright, sunny afternoon, when Lila turned on her old television to pass the time while resting from work. A live royal broadcast popped up automatically, the Crown Prince's official coronation rehearsal, streamed nationwide. The camera focused on the palace square, on the tall, devastatingly handsome man standing in full golden military regalia, surrounded by guards, ministers, and nobility. Elias. Not her soft, gentle midnight Elias. Not the man who held her in a shabby attic. This was Prince Elias Voss, heir to the Valerius throne, cold, regal, untouchable. The anchor's voice cut through the quiet room like a blade. His Royal Highness Crown Prince Elias Voss is officially engaged to Princess Serafina of the High Noble House. The royal wedding is scheduled for the end of this year, securing the kingdom's political alliance. Lila's blood turned to ice. Every late-night visit, every sweet word, every tender promise, all of it was a lie. She was not his lover. She was his secret. His mistake. His filthy, inappropriate pastime before his perfect royal marriage. The bubble of their forbidden love burst instantly, leaving nothing but broken pieces and raw, burning agony. Chapter 2: The Gala Public Humiliation. Princess Serafina found out within 48 hours. She had known Elias was slipping away for months, missing dinners, canceling private briefings, disappearing every night without explanation. She had suspected a secret lover, but she had never imagined the prince would throw away his entire royal future for a poor, unknown street florist. Serafina was beautiful, calculating, and ruthless. Raised to be queen, trained in politics, manipulation, and power plays since childhood, she did not believe in love. She believed in control. And Lila Carter was a threat to her control. Serafina did not confront Lila privately. She did not start a quiet fight. She chose destruction, public, brutal, irreversible destruction. She sent an anonymous, elegant invitation to Lila's small apartment, addressed to a Ms. Carter, inviting her to the annual Royal Charity Gala, the most prestigious event in Valerius City. Lila, confused but foolishly hopeful, thought maybe it was a mistake, or maybe a chance to earn a large donation for Mia's surgery. She had no idea it was a trap. That night, she borrowed a simple second-hand black dress, fixed her hair neatly, and stepped into the crystal-lit palace ballroom for the first time in her life. The difference was staggering. Every person around her wore designer gowns, diamond jewelry, tailored suits. Wealth and status radiated from every corner. Lila's simple dress, her worn shoes, her quiet posture made her stick out like a beggar in a royal court. All eyes turned to her the moment she stepped inside. Whispers rippled across the ballroom. Curious, mocking, disdainful. Lila's cheeks burned. She wanted to run, but she forced herself to stand tall. Then she saw Elias. He stood at the center of the ballroom beside Serafina, dressed in immaculate white royal formalwear, his sapphire eyes cold and distant. He was not smiling. Not soft. Not hers. He looked every inch the crown prince, bound to his princess. When his gaze locked onto Lila's face, his jaw tightened violently. Panic flashed in his eyes, quickly masked by royal composure. He knew what was coming. Serafina smiled perfectly, sweetly, deadly, and stepped forward to take the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, her clear, melodic voice echoed through the silent ballroom. Tonight I wish to introduce a special guest. A young woman who has been keeping my fiancé company during his private, unguarded nights. The whispers exploded into full attention. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned in. Every noble guest watched with bated breath. Ms. Lila Carter, Serafina purred, turning to face Lila directly, a charming street florist from the slums. A girl who seems to think she can steal a crown prince with pretty eyes and cheap affection. Lila's throat closed up. Humiliation scorched her skin like fire. Your Highness, Lila tried to speak, voice trembling, I never intended. Never intended. Seraphina cut her off sharply, smile dropping. You sneak into a prince's bed night after night, knowing he is engaged, knowing you are nothing but a commoner, and you claim no intention. Are you a gold digger, or simply delusional? The crowd murmured louder, cruel and judgmental. Lila's eyes filled with burning tears, but she refused to cry in front of them. She refused to give them the satisfaction. All she could do was look at Elias. Beg him with her eyes to say something. To defend her. To tell the truth that he lied to her, that he chased her, that he made her fall in love with a fake version of himself. But before Elias could open his mouth, a palace aide stepped beside him and whispered a quiet, lethal warning in his ear. The king's order. If Elias defended Lila, if he admitted their affair publicly, the royal council would immediately cut all hospital funding for Mia's emergency surgery. They would let Lila's sister die. Elias froze. His entire body went rigid with agony and helpless rage. He had two choices: save the girl he loved and kill her sister, or destroy his own love to save Mia's life. He chose the lesser evil. Elias stepped forward, took the microphone from Seraphina's hand, and looked directly at Lila with cold, empty eyes. His voice was steady, ruthless, unrecognizable to the girl who loved him. Ms. Carter is correct in saying there was no serious intention. Every breath in the ballroom stilled. Lila's heart stopped. She was merely a temporary distraction, Elias said clearly, every word a bullet into her chest. A casual night companion. Nothing more. I never loved her. I never would. A prince does not fall in love with street girls. The humiliation was complete. The crowd erupted in gasps and quiet laughter. Pitying, mocking, cruel. Lila stood frozen in the spotlight, broken and exposed, every piece of her heart shattered on the polished marble floor. Elias finished the destruction with one final, killing sentence. Let this be a lesson. Do not mistake royal kindness for affection. She was nothing but a toy. Toy. The word echoed in Lila's skull over and over, drowning everything else out. Without a single word, without a single glance back, Lila turned and walked out of the palace ballroom. She walked through the glittering halls, past the staring nobles, past the flashing cameras, into the dark night outside. And she never looked back. Chapter 3. The night she disappeared. Lila did not go home that night. She walked the rainy city streets for hours, soaked and shivering, her dress clinging to her skin, her dignity completely destroyed. Every word Elias spoke replayed endlessly in her mind, burning into her soul. Temporary distraction. Casual companion. A toy. She had given him every piece of her lonely, hard life. She had trusted him with her fears, her hopes, her sister's life. She had loved him purely, honestly, completely. And he had thrown her away in front of the entire kingdom to save his reputation. When Lila finally returned to her tiny attic at dawn, she packed one small bag. A few clothes, her most precious flower seeds, a single photo of her and Mia as children. She left everything else behind. Before she fled, she visited the hospital. She paid Mia's surgery deposit with every last penny she had saved. She left a letter for her sister, telling her she had to leave the city for work, that she would be safe, that Mia must get better. She did not explain anything. She could not. That morning, before the sun fully rose over Valeria's palace, Lila Carter boarded an international flight to New York, alone. She cut every contact. Blocked every possible way Elias could find her. Abandoned her old life entirely. No one knew the truth. No one knew that 2 weeks before the gala, Lila had found out she was pregnant. Pregnant with the crown prince's child. A baby conceived in secret love, born from royal lines, doomed from the moment it existed. Lila did not keep the child to trap Elias. She kept the child because it was the only pure, real thing left from her shattered love. the only piece of him that had not hurt her. While Lila fled into exile, Elias descended into madness. The second the gala ended, he abandoned every guest, ignored Seraphina's furious calls, and raced through the city to her attic apartment. He broke open her unlocked door, desperate to apologize, to explain, to beg for forgiveness. But the room was empty. Cold. Silent. Abandoned. Her flower stalls were closed. Her things were gone. Her presence had vanished completely. Elias stood in her empty attic for hours, staring at the faint marks on the walls, the faint scent of her lavender flowers still lingering in the air. The weight of his own words crashed down on him like a mountain. He had saved Mia's life. But he had destroyed Lila's soul. He had chosen the wrong thing to save the right person, and he would never forgive himself for it. That night, Elias Voss broke his engagement publicly. In front of the entire royal council, in front of the king, in front of every noble family in Valerius, he ended his political marriage with Seraphina. "I will not marry her," he said flatly. "I love someone else. I will wait for her forever." The kingdom erupted in chaos. The king threatened to strip him of his title. The nobles accused him of treason. The press destroyed his public image. He did not care. He did not care about crowns, power, reputation, or legacy anymore. He only cared about finding the girl he had destroyed. But Lila was gone. Vanished without a trace. For 3 years, Elias searched every country, every city, every record he could access. He found nothing. Chapter 4. 3 years later. New York. Time jump. 3 years changed everything. New York City was bright, loud, fast, and free, the complete opposite of the suffocating, rigid royal world of Valerius. Lila Carter was no longer a slum florist. She had rebuilt herself from zero. She had earned a professional botany degree, built a quiet, stable career cultivating rare greenhouse plants, and created a safe, peaceful life for her small family. And she had a son. Little Leo Carter was 2 years old, with soft dark hair, bright curious eyes, and the exact same sapphire blue gaze as his father. Leo was happy, healthy, and entirely Lila's world. Lila never spoke of Valerius. Never spoke of the prince. Never let herself remember the love that broke her. She buried her past so deep she almost believed it had never happened. By her side stood Killian Rhodes, a gentle, brilliant American doctor who had found Lila during her toughest postpartum days, who had helped her with Leo's health struggles, who had loved her quietly, patiently, loyally for 3 years. Killian was everything Elias was not. Safe. Calm. Human. No crown, no lies, no cruel political choices. He loved Lila unconditionally and treated Leo like his own child. He had already asked Lila to marry him, ready to adopt Leo officially, ready to give her the normal, peaceful life she had always deserved. Lila had not yet answered yes, but she was close. She wanted safety. She wanted peace. She wanted to stop hurting. But fate had never been kind to Lila Carter. It was a warm autumn afternoon when the past crashed back into her new life without warning. Lila was walking through a Brooklyn botanical garden with Leo in her arms, laughing as her little boo reached for colorful flowers, when a black official European motorcade pulled up at the garden entrance. A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped out of the lead car. The second Lila saw him, her blood ran cold. Elias. He was different now. 3 years of searching, 3 years of guilt, 3 years of self-destruction had carved his features sharper, colder, harder. His eyes were empty, haunted, exhausted. He looked like a man who had spent every day punishing himself for his sins. He had come to New York on official royal diplomatic business, but the second his eyes swept across the garden and landed on the small boy in Lila's arms, all politics, all duty, all royal purpose vanished from his mind. He froze completely. Leo turned his head, and his bright blue eyes met Elias's, The resemblance was undeniable, unmistakable. Same eyes, same facial structure, same stubborn little jawline. In that single heartbeat, Elias was understood everything. She had not just left him. She had left him with his child. A son he had never known existed. A family he had destroyed before he ever got to hold it. Elias's breath shattered. His entire world tilted violently. Lila saw the realization crash over his face, and panic exploded inside her chest. She turned immediately, trying to run, to hide, to escape before he could speak, before he could claim anything. But Elias moved faster than she could. In 3 long strides, he crossed the garden path and blocked her way, his body trembling with raw, unhinged emotion. His voice was broken, hoarse, barely human. Lila. It was the first time he had spoken her name in 3 years. Lila's eyes hardened into cold, unbreakable ice. Move aside, Your Highness. Chapter 5 The Mad Prince's Pursuit. The title cut through him like a blade. Your Highness. Formal. Distant. Cold. The way strangers spoke to him. The way she would never speak to him again. Elias stared down at the little boy clinging to Lila's neck, his heart splitting open in his chest. He's mine, he whispered, not asking, knowing. Lila's jaw tightened fiercely. He's mine. Only mine. You have no right to him. You never did. Lila. You abandoned me, she said sharply, voice shaking with years of suppressed pain. You humiliated me in front of the entire world. You called me a toy. Do you really think you get to show up 3 years later and claim my child? Elias's eyes filled with agony. I had no choice. The king threatened Mia's surgery. If I defended you, they would have let your sister die. Lila laughed bitterly, a cold, broken sound. You always had a choice. You chose your crown over me. Don't pretend it was sacrifice. It was cowardice. Every word was true, and every word destroyed Elias further. He reached out slowly, trembling, wanting to touch her face, wanting to hold his son, wanting to fix every broken thing between them. Lila stepped back instantly, shielding Leo protectively. Don't touch us. Her tone was final. But Elias was no longer the rational, controlled prince he once was. 3 years of endless regret had broken him completely. He was obsessive, desperate, unyielding. He would not lose her again. He would not lose his son. I'm not leaving, Elias said firmly, his voice low and dangerous. I'm not leaving you again. I'll spend every day of the rest of my life making this right. You can fix this, Lila replied flatly. Some breaks are permanent. That evening, Elias abandoned his entire royal diplomatic team, cancelled all scheduled meetings, and stayed in New York indefinitely. He bought an apartment directly in Lila's neighborhood. He showed up outside her building every morning. He waited outside her workplace every afternoon. He did not harass her. He did not force contact. He simply existed there, silent and persistent, a constant reminder of her past. He brought Leo harmless gifts, tiny sneakers, children's books, soft stuffed animals. He left them at her door, never daring to push too hard, never daring to scare his child. Lila refused every gift. Returned every package. Ignored every presence. Killian watched the entire situation with quiet fury and protective tenderness. He stood beside Lila every time Elias appeared, acting as her shield, steady and unshakable. He's toxic, Killian told her gently every night. He hurt you once. He'll hurt you again. Let me protect you. Marry me. Let me adopt Leo. Let us be a real family. Lila was torn. Her heart still ached for Elias, no matter how much she hated him. The love had been too pure, too real, too deeply rooted to disappear completely. But her mind knew better. Killian was safety. Elias was ruin. Unfortunately, ruin was not done with her yet. Serafina arrived in New York 1 week later. She had tracked Elias's every move across the ocean. She had discovered Lila's survival, discovered the child's existence, and the discovery unleashed every dark, vicious part of her jealous soul. Serafina was not going to let a poor commoner woman and her bastard child destroy her royal future. She came prepared to destroy Lila completely. Chapter 6 Frame Up and Second Betrayal. Serafina's plan was cold, calculated, and brutal. She knew she could not attack Lila directly in America, where royal power held no legal authority. So she used systems, laws, and public opinion to destroy her. Within days, false legal documents were filed against Lila. Fake financial records accused her of massive fraud. Fake witness statements claimed she had illegally abducted a royal child and hidden him from his rightful royal family. The New York Police Department received an official international alert requesting investigation into Lila Carter for child concealment and financial crimes. The raid happened in the morning, while Lila was dropping Leo off at daycare. Police officers surrounded her. Official investigators stepped forward. Cameras appeared. Public scandal exploded overnight. American botanist accused of hiding European royal heir. Mystery child of Valerius prince discovered in New York. Headlines burned across every news platform. Lila was detained for questioning. Leo was temporarily placed in state protective custody, separated from his mother. Lila broke down in the interrogation room. Not for herself. For her son. For the little boy who was crying for his mom alone in a strange room. Killian fought desperately with lawyers, bail requests, legal appeals, doing everything humanly possible to free her. But the case was international, tied to foreign royalty, complicated and high stakes. Then Elias was forced to make his second impossible choice. The Valerius Royal Council sent him an ultimatum. Publicly validate the fraud investigation, distance yourself from the criminal woman, officially claim the child as royal property and we will resolve the case cleanly, return the child safely, and drop all charges long-term. Or refuse, and let the legal process drag on for months, possibly years, leaving Leo trapped in state custody indefinitely. Once again, Elias was forced to choose between Lila's reputation and his child's safety. He hesitated. That hesitation was enough to break Lila's trust entirely. When the news broke that Elias had officially cooperated with the investigation, had agreed to royal custody negotiations, Lila did not just feel betrayed. She felt stupid. Stupid for ever hoping he could change. Stupid for ever believing his regret was real. She was released on bail eventually, thanks to Killian's endless legal fighting, but the damage was irreversible. Her career was damaged. Her reputation was ruined. Her son had been taken from her, even if temporarily. And worst of all, days later, little Leo developed a sudden, terrifying high fever. Blood tests revealed acute pediatric leukemia. Chapter 7 The Only Match. The diagnosis shattered Lila. Leo's condition deteriorated rapidly. Weakness, bruising, fatigue, dangerous infection risks. The doctors told her plainly, without an immediate bone marrow transplant, Leo would not survive. The hospital ran emergency donor screenings across the entire country. No matches. No compatible donors in America. No compatible donors in the international database. Until they tested Elias Voss. The results came back 100% perfect compatibility. The only match in the world. Elias did not hesitate for a single second. I'll do it, he told the medical team immediately. Anything to save my son. Lila had no choice but to let him stay close. She hated needing him. Hated being dependent on the man who destroyed her life. But she could not watch her child die out of pride. The days in the hospital were strange, tense, bittersweet. Elias stayed by Leo's bedside 24 hours a day. He read to him, held his hand, soothed his fevers, slept on the hospital floor beside his bed. He proved himself a devoted, desperate father, gentle and selfless in a way Lila had never seen from him before. Watching him care for their son, Lila's frozen heart cracked open against her will. But Serafina's cruelty was not finished. She attempted to sabotage the transplant procedure, bribing hospital staff to alter medication doses, trying to endanger Leo's life to eliminate the royal bastard child forever. Lila found out about the plot days before surgery. Terrified, desperate to protect her son, she fled the hospital with Leo in the middle of the night, trying to escape Serafina's reach entirely. It was raining again, just like the night they met. The roads were slick and dark. A speeding car crashed into their vehicle mid-escape. The crash was violent, brutal, life-altering. Lila woke up in the ICU 3 days later. Her body was bruised, broken, bandaged. But her mind was far worse. The doctors delivered the diagnosis softly, gently, cruelly. Traumatic brain injury. Retrograde amnesia. Lila Carter had lost every memory of Elias Voss. Every love. Every lie. Every betrayal. Every broken promise. All gone. She remembered New York. She remembered her life. She remembered Killian. She remembered Leo. But she had absolutely no idea who Elias was. When she opened her eyes and saw the prince sitting beside her bed, exhausted and grief-stricken, she looked at him with complete, empty stranger confusion. Who are you? Chapter 8. The prince with no name in her memory. Elias's world shattered a second time. He had spent 3 years suffering for her, 3 years repenting, 3 years begging for a chance to fix his mistakes. Now she could not even remember his existence. To her, he was just a strange, overly intense royal man hovering over her hospital bed, staring at her like she was his entire world. I'm someone who cares about you, Elias whispered brokenly, unable to bear telling her the full truth, unable to burden her injured mind with their tragic history. Killian stepped in immediately, protective and steady. He's a distant royal acquaintance, Killian explained smoothly, shielding Lila from pain. He's here because of Leo's medical case. Nothing more. Lila accepted the explanation easily. Her mind felt blank, light, strangely peaceful without all the old pain weighing her down. She smiled softly at Killian, trusting him completely. Thank you for staying with me. Elias watched that gentle, grateful smile directed at another man, and he understood true hell. He had to watch the woman he loved build a happy, peaceful life with someone else, completely unaware of the love and tragedy they had shared. He had to stand on the sidelines, silent and suffering, while Killian loved her openly, freely, happily. Yet Elias could not leave. He still had to donate his bone marrow to save Leo's life. He still had to protect them from Serafina's ongoing threats. So he stayed. He stayed as a stranger. Quiet. Unassuming. Suffering in silence. The transplant surgery succeeded perfectly. Leo recovered slowly but steadily, his little body healing thanks to his father's sacrifice. Every day Elias spent with his son was pure, uncomplicated joy. Every day he spent watching Lila smile at Killian was unbearable torture. Months passed in this strange, painful limbo. Serafina continued plotting in the shadows, but Elias finally gathered enough evidence of her sabotage, her fraud, her criminal schemes, her attempts to harm Leo and Lila. He compiled every proof, every witness statement, every recorded conversation. He sent it all to the Valerius Royal Council and the International Court. Serafina's crimes exploded into public view. Her noble house fell from power overnight. Her family's titles were stripped. Her political alliances crumbled. She was sentenced to permanent royal exile, banned from ever stepping foot in Valerius or approaching the royal family again. The villain was defeated. But Elias still had not earned happiness. Lila still did not remember him. And she was not fully prepared to marry Killian. She said yes to his proposal. Chapter 9, Memory Return. The memories came back on a quiet, rainy night just like the night they first met. Lila was sitting beside Leo's sleeping bed, watching the rain fall against the window, when a sudden sharp headache pierced her skull. Images flashed violently in her mind. A crashed car in a storm. A bleeding blood stranger in her shabby attic. Midnight secret dates by the sea. Soft whispered promises. The palace ballroom spotlight. The cruel cold words, she was only a toy. Every memory flooded back at once, crashing over her like a tidal wave. Lila gasped, clutching her head, tears pouring down her face uncontrollably. All the pain, all the love, all the betrayal, all the heartbreak returned in full, brutal force. She remembered Elias. She remembered everything. When Elias walked into the room minutes later to check on Leo, he froze the second he saw her face. Her eyes were no longer empty stranger eyes. They were full of grief, anger, love, sorrow, every emotion she had lost. You remember, he whispered, breathless and terrified. Lila stared at him, tears streaming, voice broken. I remember everything. The final confrontation was raw, brutal, honest. Lila screamed at him for every lie, every betrayal, every cruel choice. Elias knelt on the floor in front of her, bowed his royal head, and accepted every word, every accusation, every tear. He did not defend himself. He did not make excuses. He only confessed his sins fully, completely, desperately. I ruined us, he whispered. I ruined everything. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve you or Leo. But I will spend every single day of my life making amends. I'll give up the crown. I'll give up the throne. I'll give up every royal title, every privilege, every part of my old life if you let me stay with you. True to his word, Elias had already sent official abdication paperwork to the Valerius royal court weeks earlier. He was no longer the crown prince. He had abandoned his birthright, his kingdom, his legacy. All he had left was his son and the woman he had broken. Chapter 10, The Final Choice. Lila stood between two futures. Killian offered her peace, safety, stability, a life without pain, a life without royal drama, a perfect normal family. Elias offered her pain, history, struggle, flawed redemption, and the fierce, unforgettable love that had shaped her entire life. She loved Killian for his kindness and loyalty. But she loved Elias with every broken piece of her soul. After days of quiet, agonizing thought, Lila made her choice. She met Killian privately, apologized sincerely, and ended their engagement gently but firmly. Killian was heartbroken, but he understood. You never belonged with me, he told her softly. Your heart was always his, even when your mind forgot. I hope you find the happiness you deserve. He left her life with grace and dignity, still choosing to remain a trusted family friend and Leo's daughter. Lila walked to Elias that night, standing before the man who had fallen from royalty just to be worthy of her. I will give you a second chance, she said firmly, teary but resolute. But you will never be a prince to me. You will be nothing more than a man. A father. My equal. If you fail me again, I will live forever, and you will never see us again. Elias's eyes flooded with relieved, devout tears. He knelt before her, not as royalty, but as a humble man begging for his family. I'll spend the rest of my life proving to you that I'm worthy. The cursed, forbidden love between a fallen prince and a mortal poor girl finally broke free from the chains of status, lies, and royal fate. They lost everything to find each other again. No crowns. No lies. No class gaps. Only love, redemption, and their healed little family. The quiet rain tapped endlessly against the apartment floor-to-ceiling windows, soft and rhythmic, the exact same rainfall that had witnessed the birth and ruin of their love 3 years prior. The New York night was muted, distant city sirens blurred by glass, the warm lamplight spilling gently over Leo's sleeping face. The little boy was curled up in his taller bed, cheeks flushed with sleep, small fingers loosely curled around a worn lavender flower plush Lila had stitched for him months ago. Lila sat on the edge of his bed, her elbows resting on her knees, her breath slow and shallow. 4 months after waking from her coma, she had lived in this blank, gentle peace, no haunting nightmares, no lingering heartache, no bitter memories of a kingdom she'd fled. She thought she'd been blessed, freed from the pain that had once shattered her entire world. She planned her quiet future with Killian, planned a life of ordinary warmth, stability, and safety for her son. She had been wrong. Peace had only been a temporary reprieve, a fragile pause before the storm of her past crashed back to drown her. A sharp, splitting headache pierced her temples without warning, hot and violent, sharp enough to make her gasp and clamp her palms tight over her eyes. For a heartbeat, the world tilted, the soft lamplight bleeding into blinding white, the sound of rain warping into the deafening roar of a stormy night 3 years ago in Valerius. Memories exploded into her mind, unfiltered, brutal, vivid enough to feel like she was reliving every second all over again. She saw the crumpled black sports car, glass shattered across rain-soaked asphalt, smoke curling through the downpour. She saw herself dragging a bleeding stranger into her tiny, leaking attic, his skin cold under her trembling hands, his sapphire eyes fluttering open for the first time to pin her in place. She remembered the midnight visits, the quiet whispers, the way Elias would slip into her cramped room after escaping the palace, shedding his crown and his title just to sit with her on the cold floor and eat plain pasta. She remembered his soft promises, the way he'd hold her frozen hands between his warm palms, the way he'd sworn he'd never let her suffer again. Then the sweet memories shattered, replaced by the cruel, burning ones that had haunted her dreams for years before her amnesia. The royal live broadcast, the golden military regalia, the anchor's cold voice announcing his engagement. The anonymous gala invitation, the borrowed black dress, the mocking stares of every noble in the ballroom. Seraphina's sharp, mocking tone cutting through the silence, exposing her secret love to the entire kingdom. And finally Elias's voice, cold and ruthless, burying every trace of their love in front of the world. She was merely a temporary distraction. A casual night companion. Nothing more. She was nothing but a toy. Tears burst free before she could stop them, hot and burning, streaming down her cheeks in endless streams. Her shoulders shook violently, silent sobs racking her body as every suppressed emotion, grief, betrayal, rage, desperate, wasted love flooded back to the surface after 3 years of dormancy. The blank, peaceful fog in her mind vanished completely. She remembered everything. Every lie, every stolen night, every cruel choice, every broken piece of her heart that Elias had crushed beneath his royal boots. The bedroom door creaked softly behind her. Elias had come to check on Leo, as he did every single night without fail. He'd grown used to the quiet routine, to standing in the doorway like a silent ghost, watching the family he'd broken thrive without him, content to simply exist in their orbit even if he was never allowed to touch or speak or belong. He froze the second his eyes landed on her. He knew instantly. He could read it in the way her back trembled, in the salt tears glistening on her cheeks, in the raw, broken fire burning in her eyes where only empty, polite warmth had lived for months. The amnesia was gone. She remembered him. Remembered everything. Lila, he breathed, his voice cracking, barely audible in the quiet room. His entire body went rigid, every muscle cold with terror and desperate hope, two warring emotions tearing him apart. Lila stood slowly, turning to face him, her eyes red and swollen, her gaze sharp enough to cut. There was no longer any confusion, no polite stranger kindness, no blank acceptance of his presence. There was only pain, years and years of buried agony, and a bitter, unyielding anger. You remember, he repeated, the words a broken prayer, half agony, half miracle. I remember everything, she whispered, her voice hoarse and shattered, thick with tears. Every lie. Every secret. Every time you held me and lied to my face. Every word you said in that ballroom. I remember it all, Elias. The use of his first name stripped away every layer of distance, every polite formal barrier they'd hidden behind during her amnesia. It was the name he'd given her in the dark, the name of the boy she loved, not the prince who destroyed her. Elias stepped into the room, closing the door softly behind him, as if afraid to wake Leo and shatter the fragile, painful moment between them. He did not dare move closer, did not dare reach for her, simply stood frozen a few feet away, his sapphire eyes glistening with unshed tears, the first tears he'd allowed himself in years. For months, he'd endured the worst kind of torture, being loved as a stranger, pitied as an acquaintance, forgotten as the man who'd ruined her life. He told himself it was penance, that he deserved every second of her indifference. But now that she remembered, now that she hated him fully and knowingly, the pain was sharper, more real, infinitely worse. Say something, Lila snapped, her voice breaking, stepping back until her shoulders pressed against the windowsill, rain streaking the glass behind her like fallen tears. Defend yourself. Make up another excuse. Tell me again that you had no choice, that you did it for Mia, that you were forced. I'm listening, Your Highness. The title was venomous, cold, laced with every ounce of her contempt. Elias sank slowly to his knees, on the hardwood floor, uncaring of the cold seeping through his dress pants, uncaring of the dignity he'd spent a lifetime upholding. A crown prince, raised to stand tall before kings and nations, now kneeling broken and humble before the woman he destroyed. I have no excuses, he said quietly, his voice steady but hollow, stripped of all royal pride and pretense. None. Not one. I lied to you from the very first night. I let you love a version of me that never truly existed. I let you sacrifice everything for a secret that was always going to burn you alive. Lila laughed then, a bitter, broken sound that cut through the quiet room, sharp and painful. You finally admit it. After 3 years of searching, after 3 years of playing the repentant prince, you finally stop lying. I've lied to everyone else, he whispered, his head bowed, dark hair falling forward to shadow his exhausted face. Never to myself. I've known every day since the gala that I ruined you. That I broke the only good thing I ever had. You broke me in front of the entire world, Lila cried, tears spilling faster now, her chest heaving with suppressed sobs. You let them call me a gold digger, a whore, a liar. You called me a toy. You made me feel worthless, Elias. I loved you with every single thing I had. I gave you my lonely nights, my last bit of money, my trust, my entire heart, and you threw it all away for your crown. I know, he whispered, his throat tight with agony. I have replayed that moment 1,000 times a day. 1,000,000 times. Every time I closed my eyes, I see you standing alone in that spotlight, broken and humiliated, looking at me like I'd stabbed you straight through the heart. You did, she said bluntly, raw and unforgiving. You stabbed me. You killed the girl who loved you. The girl who saved your life. She died in that ballroom that night. Silence fell thick and heavy between them, only the soft rain and Leo's quiet breathing filling the empty spaces. The weight of 3 years of separation, 3 years of regret, 3 years of hidden love and hatred pressed down on both of them, suffocating and unescapable. Lila's gaze drifted to her sleeping son, her soft expression fracturing instantly into grief. I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks before that gala. I found out I was carrying your child, and I was stupid enough to hope that maybe it would change things. That maybe you choose us. Elias's head snapped up, his eyes wide with fresh, devastating agony. He had guessed, had suspected, had pieced the timeline together over months of obsession, but hearing her say it out loud, hearing the quiet heartbreak in her voice, shattered what little resolve he had left. You never told me, he whispered, brokenly. Why would I? Lila shook her head, her voice sharp and defeated. What would you have done? Left your crown? Left Serafina? Left the perfect royal life you were so desperate to protect? You would have called my child a mistake too. Just like you called me a toy. Never, Elias breathed, the word fierce and desperate, absolute. I would have chosen you. I would have chosen Leo. I would have burned the entire palace to the ground before I let either of you suffer. You didn't, Lila said flatly. You chose your crown then. You chose it again when Serafina framed me. You hesitated when my son was taken from me. You always choose your power, Elias. Always. The accusation landed perfectly, crushing him. He could not deny it. He could not argue. Every word she spoke was the unvarnished truth he'd spent 3 years punishing himself for. I hesitated because I was terrified of losing him forever, he admitted, his voice raw and honest. No more royal lies, no more half-truths. The council told me if I refused to cooperate, Leo would be locked in state custody for years. I'd never get to see him. I'd never get to save him. I chose the only path that let me stay close to my son. To stay close to you. You broke my trust again, Lila said, her voice shaking. You made me believe you were just like every other royal who thought they could take and take and take from me without consequence. You made me believe I was always going to be alone. Elias pushed himself unsteadily to his feet, his eyes never leaving hers, his gaze fierce and pleading, desperate to make her understand the hell he'd lived in since she left. I had paid for every choice I made, he said quietly. Every single day for 3 years. I broke my engagement. I lost my family's trust. I lost my kingdom's respect. I abandoned every duty, every title, every privilege I was born with. I searched every corner of the world for you. I slept in hotel rooms, hunted through immigration records, tracked every possible lead, just hoping I'd get one chance to apologize. He paused, his hand fisting at his side, voice dropping to a broken whisper. I lived in hell without you. I still do. Lila's heart ached despite herself, the old, buried love warring violently with the fresh, burning pain. She wanted to hate him completely. She wanted to walk away and never look back. But she could not ignore the truth staring her in the face. This man had destroyed her, but he had destroyed himself right alongside her. You left Valerius, she said quietly, questioning more than stating. I abdicated, he replied immediately, no hesitation, no pride. 6 months ago. I sent official paperwork to the royal court. I renounced my claim to the throne. I stripped myself of every title, every right, every piece of royal power I ever had. I am no longer the crown prince of Valerius. I am nothing. Just Elias. A man with no kingdom, no crown, no family, only a son and a woman I need to forgive me. Lila's breath caught. She had not known. She had never imagined he would give up the crown he'd once chosen over her. Why? She whispered. Because the crown was never worth you, he said, the words steady and true, no royal performative sweetness, only raw, human devotion. I was young and stupid and terrified once. I thought duty was everything. I thought the throne was my whole purpose. But the second you walked out of that ballroom, I realized I traded my entire future for an empty title. I traded the only love I'd ever had for a kingdom that means nothing without you in it. He stepped forward slowly, carefully, as if approaching a wounded animal, giving her every chance to pull away, to stop him. I have nothing left to offer you. No wealth, no status, no power to protect you anymore. I'm just a man who's spent 3 years repenting for the worst mistake of his life. A man who loves you more than air, more than life, more than any crown or kingdom. Lila looked away from him, her gaze falling back to Leo's sleeping face, her heart torn in 2 directions. For months, she'd had Killian's quiet, steady safety to cling to. A life without drama, without pain, without the ghosts of her past. a life where she could raise her son in peace. But Killian had never loved her in the burning, all-consuming, destructive way Elias did. Killian loved the healed, peaceful version of her. Elias loved every broken piece, every scar, every mistake, every painful part of her past and present. "I'm engaged," Lila said quietly, the words heavy and final. "I said yes to Killian. I was going to marry him. I was going to give my son a normal life." Elias's face paled, his shoulders slumping in visible agony, but he did not flinch, did not argue, did not beg desperately. He simply nodded, accepting the blow with quiet resignation. "I know," he whispered. "I've watched you build that life. I've watched you be happy without me. If you choose him, I will not stand in your way. I will not disrupt your peace. I will only stay close enough to protect you and Leo. That is all I deserve." "You do that?" Lila asked, surprised by his quiet surrender. "You let me marry him and stay away." "I'd let you do anything that makes you happy," Elias said, his voice broken but sincere. "Even if it means I spend the rest of my life watching you love someone else. Even if I never get to hold you, never get to call you mine again. Your happiness is the only thing that matters to me now. You and Leo. That's all." The honesty in his words broke what was left of her resolve. For 3 years, she carried the belief that he was arrogant, selfish, entitled, that he always put his own power above everyone else. But the man standing in front of her now was unrecognizable from the cold prince in the ballroom. He was humbled, broken, stripped of all pride, willing to sacrifice his own happiness entirely for hers. The rain continued to fall outside, soft and endless, closing the circle on their tragic, fated love. It had started in rain, broken in rain, and now hung in the balance in the quiet New York rain. Lila wiped the tears from her cheeks, her gaze steadying, her heart finally settling into a quiet, painful clarity. She had a choice to make between the safe, empty peace she craved for years, and the dangerous, passionate, flawed love that had always owned her soul. Between forgetting the past, and finally healing it. The memories came back on a quiet, rainy night just like the night they first met. Lila was sitting beside Leo's sleeping bed, watching the rain fall against the window, when a sudden sharp headache pierced her skull. Images flashed violently in her mind. A crashed car in a storm. A bleeding blood stranger in her shabby attic. Midnight secret dates by the sea. Soft whispered promises. The palace ballroom spotlight. The cruel cold words, she was only a toy. Every memory flooded back at once, crashing over her like a tidal wave. Lila gasped, clutching her head, tears pouring down her face uncontrollably. All the pain, all the love, all the betrayal, all the heartbreak returned in full, brutal force. She remembered Elias. She remembered everything. When Elias walked into the room minutes later to check on Leo, he froze the second he saw her face. Her eyes were no longer empty stranger eyes. They were full of grief, anger, love, sorrow, every emotion she had lost. "You remember," he whispered, breathless and terrified. Lila stared at him, tears streaming, voice broken. "I remember everything." The final confrontation was raw, brutal, honest. Lila screamed at him for every lie, every betrayal, every cruel choice. Elias knelt on the floor in front of her, bowed his royal head, and accepted every word, every accusation, every tear. He did not defend himself. He did not make excuses. He only confessed his sins fully, completely, desperately. "I ruined us," he whispered. "I ruined everything. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve you or Leo. But I will spend every single day of my life making amends. I'll give up the crown. I'll give up the throne. I'll give up every royal title, every privilege, every part of my old life if you let me stay with you." True to his word, Elias had already sent official abdication paperwork to the Valerius royal court weeks earlier. He was no longer the crown prince. He had abandoned his birthright, his kingdom, his legacy. All he had left was his son and the woman he had broken. The next morning, Lila woke up long before Leo's small alarm clock buzzed on the nightstand. The rain had faded into a thin gray mist that blurred the skyline of Manhattan, and every fragment of her lost memories lingered sharp and vivid behind her eyelids, refusing to soften even after hours of restless sleep. She padded barefoot to the kitchen, her feet cold against the hardwood floor, and filled a cheap ceramic mug with lukewarm herbal tea, the same cheap blend she used to brew in her Valeria's attic on cold midnight nights, a small habit she clung to without understanding why during her amnesia. Now the scent alone twisted her chest tight with grief. She leaned against the windowsill, staring out at the quiet street below, replaying every word of last night's confrontation on a loop. Elias's broken kneeling figure, his admission of every lie, his quiet confession that he renounced the throne entirely for her and Leo. Part of her wanted to cling to that sacrifice, to let herself believe his remorse was permanent, not just another desperate ploy born out of sudden fear of losing his child. The other half of her could not shake the ghost of the gala, the cold way he discarded her to protect his royal status 3 years prior. Old wounds did not vanish just because a man traded a crown for a humble life. A soft knock tapped at her front door 20 minutes later. She did not need to check the peephole to know who waited on the other side. Only Elias visited her apartment this early, bearing paper bags filled with fresh fruit, warm pastries Leo loved, and small potted lavender he sourced from local botanical nurseries as a silent peace offering. She hesitated for nearly a full minute before twisting the lock, pulling the door open a crack to face him. He stood in the mist-shrouded hallway without a coat, dark hair damp with fine droplets, hands full of paper bags crinkling at the edges. There was no royal polish to him today, no tailored silk shirts, no polished leather dress shoes, just a simple gray cotton sweater and worn denim, the kind of casual clothes he'd only worn in secret when sneaking to her attic all those years ago. His sapphire eyes held no demanding hope, only quiet, cautious deference, as if he expected her to slam the door shut in his face without a second thought. "I brought breakfast for Leo," he said gently, lifting the bags slightly, voice soft enough not to rouse the sleeping boy inside. "No fancy gifts, no demands. I just wanted to make sure he eats before his morning checkup with Killian." Lila stepped aside to let him cross the threshold, her jaw set tight. She would not ban him from his son. No matter how deep her anger ran, Leo deserved to know both parents, unclouded by her own heartbreak. She watched as Elias set the bags down on the kitchen counter, his movements slow and careful, avoiding any accidental brush of her skin as he unpacked berries, warm croissants, and a tiny potted lavender sprout, its purple buds barely unfurled. "I used to bring you lavender every week back in Valeria's," he murmured, glancing at the small plant, his tone thick with quiet nostalgia. "You said it smelled like calm, like a life untouched by palace chaos. I found a greenhouse downtown that grows the exact strain you sold at your flower stall." Lila's throat burned at the memory, the faint scent of the flower wrapping around her like a ghostly blanket. "That was before you lied about who you were. Before you threw me to the wolves in front of every noble in the kingdom." Elias's shoulders sagged, his fingers curling loosely around the edge of the counter, no rebuttal rising to his lips. He had no defense left, no half-truths to hide behind, no royal authority to shield him from her resentment. "I know I cannot erase that night. I will never ask you to forget what I did to you. But I beg you not to punish Leo for my mistakes. He does not deserve to grow up wondering why his father can never stay close. Why his mother's eyes turn cold every time I step into a room." The mention of their son softened the sharp edge of Lila's rage, her gaze drifting toward the closed bedroom door where Leo still slept soundly. The little boy had latched onto Elias unconsciously these past months, drawn to the identical blue eyes and quiet gentle manner he only half understood during her amnesia. Leo lit up every time Elias arrived, chattering non-stop about dinosaurs and flower gardens, clinging to his hand whenever they walked through the botanical park together. To rip that bond apart out of her own heart felt cruel, a weight of guilt settling heavy in her stomach. I will never keep you from him, Lila admitted, setting her tea mug down hard enough that liquid sloshed over the rim. But do not mistake that for forgiveness. I still plan to speak with Killian today, to work through our engagement and tell him everything I remember about my past with you. I owe him full honesty before I make any final choice about our future. A faint flicker of sorrow crossed Elias's face at the name of the doctor who had cared for her through her blank, peaceful months, who had loved her without pain or royal drama hanging over their heads. He did not argue, did not beg her to cut Killian off immediately, only nodded in quiet acceptance. He is a good man. He gave you safety when I left you with nothing. Whatever decision you reach with him, I will respect it fully. My only request is that I get to stay present in Leo's life, no matter what path you choose for yourself. Their quiet conversation was cut short by soft, sleepy footsteps padding across the carpet. Leo stumbled out of the bedroom, rubbing at his bleary eyes, his small face lighting up the second he spotted Elias by the kitchen counter. He darted forward without hesitation, tiny arms wrapping tight around Elias's thigh, burying his face into the soft fabric of his sweater. Elias's entire expression melted the instant his son touched him, all his lingering guilt and grief softening into pure, tender warmth as he knelt down to lift the boy into his arms. "Daddy!" Leo giggled, winding his fingers into Elias's dark hair, oblivious to the heavy tension hanging thick between his parents. "Can we plant the new flower outside after DR? Killian checks my blood. I wanna watch it grow big like the ones in the garden." Elias pressed a soft kiss to the top of Leo's messy brown hair, nodding gently. "We absolutely can, little one. I brought extra soil and a small wooden planter just for you." Lila stood back, watching the quiet father-son moment unfold, her heart split clean in two. She could see the raw, unfeigned love Elias held for their child, the way he prioritized Leo's comfort and joy above his own desperate desire to win her back. Killian would provide a quiet, conflict-free life, free from the shadow of European royalty and old betrayals, but he could never offer Leo the full, unbroken paternal bond he clearly craved with Elias. The choice stretched out before her, heavy and impossible, no perfect answer waiting to ease her suffering. An hour later, Killian arrived at the apartment for Leo's routine post-transplant blood work, carrying a leather medical satchel slung over one shoulder. He paused in the doorway when he spotted Elias lingering in the kitchen, his warm smile fading into quiet understanding the second he read the raw grief and unmasked emotion in Lila's eyes. He did not need her to speak a single word to guess what had happened overnight. Her memories had returned, and the fragile, peaceful life they built together stood on the brink of collapse. "Can we talk privately for a moment before I examine Leo?" Killian asked softly, glancing between Lila and Elias, his tone calm and steady, no trace of anger or accusation despite the clear threat to their engagement. Lila nodded, following him out onto the small fire escape overlooking the city street, pulling the glass door shut behind them to muffle the sound of Leo and Elias laughing inside the apartment. The cold mist nipped at her cheeks as she leaned against the metal railing, her voice shaky as she laid out every recovered memory, every lie, every cruel betrayal she endured at Elias's hands 3 years prior. She told Killian about the rainy night they met, the secret midnight dates hidden from the entire royal family, the humiliating gala public betrayal, the hidden pregnancy, her flight to New York, the car crash that stole all her painful memories for months on end. Killian listened without interruption, his gaze soft and sympathetic, never cutting her off or rushing her through the horrific story of her lost youth. When she finished speaking, he reached out to brush a strand of damp hair behind her ear, his touch gentle and comforting, the same quiet kindness that had pulled her through her darkest postpartum days in New York. I suspected there was a heavy trauma you buried deep down, he admitted quietly, staring out at the gray Manhattan skyline. You never spoke of your old life overseas, never watched royal news, flinched away from every European aristocrat I crossed paths with at the hospital. I held on to hope that one day you'd trust me enough to share it, but I never expected something this painful. Lila's eyes filled with fresh tears, guilt gnawing at her chest over the promise of marriage she'd given him only weeks before her memories returned. I am so sorry, Killian. When I forgot Elias, I truly believed I could build a normal, happy life with you. I wanted that stability more than anything, for Leo and for myself. But now that every memory is back, I cannot pretend my heart does not still hold space for the man who broke me, even after all the harm he caused. Killian's shoulders slumped faintly, a quiet heartbreak flickering across his face. But he did not grow bitter or lash out at her or the prince waiting inside the apartment. He had always loved Lila unselfishly, prioritizing her peace over his own longing for a family. I do not blame you for holding on to that love. The connection you share with Elias was forged long before I ever stepped foot in your life, rooted in hardship and secret affection no ordinary life could ever compete with. I cannot ask you to stay with me if every day you spend in my home you mourn the life you lost with him. I don't want to hurt you, Lila whispered, tears spilling down her cold cheeks. You've given me safety, care, endless patience these past 3 years. You loved Leo like your own son without a single complaint. I do not deserve your kindness after stringing you along with a false promise of marriage. You were not stringing me along, Killian reassured her firmly, squeezing her hand lightly. Your amnesia was not a choice. The girl I loved these past months was a version of you unburdened by unspeakable heartache, and I will always cherish the quiet time we shared together. But I cannot ask you to suppress every recovered memory, every lingering feeling for Elias, just to stay with me. That would not be real happiness for either of us. He pulled the small silver engagement ring from his coat pocket, twisting it gently between his fingers before pressing it into her open palm. I'm returning this to you freely, no resentment, no hard feelings. I will remain Leo's primary pediatric doctor, continue checking his recovery from the leukemia transplant, and I will always be here as a trusted friend for both you and the boy. But I cannot marry you knowing your heart belongs somewhere else, no matter how much I wish things could be different. Lila closed her fingers around the cold metal ring, her chest aching with a mix of gratitude and crushing guilt. Killian's grace in letting her go only made her regret the false hope she'd given him deeper. You deserve someone who can love you fully, without half their heart trapped in a tragic past thousands of miles across the ocean. I will find that person someday, Killian smiled faintly, though his eyes glistened with quiet sorrow. But for now, my only priority is making sure you and Leo are safe and happy, whatever that future looks like for you too. If Elias truly means every word of his repentance, if he's willing to give up every royal luxury to stand beside you as an equal ordinary man, then I will not stand in your way. They stepped back inside the apartment minutes later, Killian slipping straight into his medical exam routine with Leo to avoid lingering awkward tension. Elias watched them from across the living room, his gaze locked on Lila's pale, tear-streaked face, instantly guessing the outcome of their private conversation on the fire escape. He did not move to crowd her, did not rush forward to celebrate the end of her engagement to Killian. He simply waited quietly by the window, letting her process the weight of the choice she'd just made without pressure or demand. Once Killian finished Leo's blood work and packed away his medical supplies, he pulled Lila into a soft, gentle hug goodbye, nodding faintly at Elias as he headed for the front door. The sound of the door clicking shut behind him left the apartment wrapped in heavy, fragile silence, only Leo's quiet humming as he colored dinosaur pictures on the coffee table cutting through the thick air. Lila turned to face Elias, the silver engagement ring still clutched tight in her palm, All the anger and resentment from the night before softened into exhausted, weary vulnerability. I ended things with Killian. He let me go without anger, agreed to stay as Leo's doctor and a family friend. But that does not mean I am ready to fall back into the love we shared 3 years ago. Trust takes far longer to rebuild than it does to break. Elias crossed the room slowly, stopping several feet away to give her space, not daring to close the gap between them until she signaled it was safe. I do not expect instant forgiveness, or instant love. I expect to spend months, even years proving to you that I am no longer the selfish prince who chose his crown over the woman he loved. I gave up the throne, abandoned all royal wealth tied to my title, cut every tie to Serafina and the Valerius nobility. All I own now is a modest apartment in this neighborhood, enough savings to provide for Leo's medical bills and daily needs, and the endless patience to wait however long you need to heal. He paused, his voice softening to a raw, earnest murmur, eyes locked unblinking on hers. I will learn to live as an ordinary man, no palace guards, no political duties, no secret lies hanging over every quiet moment we share. I will show you every single day that you and Leo are my entire world, far more valuable than any crown or kingdom I was born to inherit. All I ask is a chance to earn back the trust one destroyed. Lila glanced over at their son, scribbling bright green crayon across a sheet of paper, drawing stick figures of her, Elias, and Killian side by side in a garden full of lavender flowers. For the first time since her memories returned, she allowed herself to imagine a quiet, simple future free from royal scandal and hidden secrets, a small house outside the city, flower gardens stretching across the yard, Leo running between them without fear of separation, Elias standing beside her not as a prince, but as an equal partner who had sacrificed everything to earn the right to love her openly. She unfurled her fingers, setting the silver engagement ring down on the wooden coffee table beside Leo's crayon box, and took one slow, careful step forward, closing half the distance between herself and Elias. Her voice was quiet, steady, a fragile olive branch extended after years of unending heartbreak. I will give you that chance, she said firmly, watching the breath catch in his throat, tears glistening bright in his sapphire eyes. But remember my rules. No more secrets, no more hiding who we are from the world, no more choosing power or status over our family. If you break any of these promises, I will take Leo and disappear from your life forever, and you will never find us again. Elias nodded rapidly, unable to speak for a long bit, overwhelmed by the fragile hope she finally granted him. He reached out slowly, hesitating until she gave a tiny, subtle nod of permission before cupping her cheek gently in his palm, his touch light, reverent, as if handling something infinitely precious he'd once thrown away carelessly. The cold mist from the morning air lingered on his fingertips, soft against her skin, and for the first time in 3 long, agonizing years, Lila did not pull away from his touch. I will never break another promise to you, Lila, he swore quietly, his voice thick with unshed tears. I will spend every remaining day of my life proving that your love, and our son, are the only treasures I will ever need. Outside the apartment windows, the gray morning mist lifted slowly, thin streaks of pale golden sunlight breaking through the cloud cover to spill down onto the quiet city street. Somewhere in the living room, Leo held up his crayon drawing with a loud, cheerful shout, waving it wildly to catch both their attention, oblivious to the fragile, hard-won truth finally settled between his broken, fated parents. The cursed divide between royalty and poverty, between eternal duty and mortal love, had finally begun to mend slowly, painfully, but undeniably whole again.